Hey everybody, we're going to talk about mockups and how to do that in Photoshop. But first of all, we need to talk about, well, what is a mockup, why you would even consider using a mockup in your photography or artwork. And let's take a look at this image, and I'm going to build a basic mockup for you from scratch. So you can replace your artwork or image in that frame as many times as you would like. Are we ready for this? Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to the channel, this is dedicated to photography and as a photo artist, pushing ourselves to think creatively out of the box. All right, I had a question asked, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, about do I use mockups? And the answer is yes, I occasionally do that. I've been doing that for years. And what is a mockup? Well, and why would you even do it? Okay, so let's talk about the concept of what is the whole purpose of a mockup. And then I'm going to give you the building blocks on how to actually create that in Photoshop. And there's a lot of different ways of doing it. But if you go to, it's just, a mockup is a way of presenting your image and say artwork in a sort of a fancy way, more of an upscale way. It tends to add a little bit more value to that image when it's displayed that way. And I'll show you a couple of examples here in a minute. But let's say you go to a restaurant and it's just a basic family sit-down restaurant. So I'm going to go to this image right here. And this is just the food that you get. And it's like, you got a hamburger and fries or pizza, whatever, spaghetti on a plate. And not that the food is bad. The food could be incredibly awesome. But then you end up going to like a fine dining restaurant or a very upscale place. And then you're going to order like, I don't know, some snacks or whatever. And it's displayed like this to you. And you got little, amounts of whatever there is there to snack on. My point is, you are going to pay a little bit more money for that because it's all about the ambiance. It's all about the presentation of it. It's not so much about the food. I mean, it better be good, which I'm sure it is. But the point is, it's the way it's displayed to you. It adds value to the food. I guess. I mean, it's just a psychological thing. And that's the same thing that happens when we do mock-ups. This is another example of a dessert. I mean, the amount of time it takes to actually create that. Now, it may be just mediocre tasting. It might be like, okay, it's not bad, but it's not the greatest thing in the world. But because of the way it's presented to us, it just psychologically adds value to that. So it's the same thing with mockups. Mockups are something that you design. You're going to showcase your artwork, but then you want to rotate that artwork and keep using that same mockup. And so I'm going to teach you how to do a basic mockup here in Photoshop from scratch. So here's some examples of something I've been working on, and that is displaying a horizontal image in this way. And I'll show you what, again, the file I'm working on a little bit later toward the end of the video on this. But again, it just sort of classes up an image versus just showing the image by itself. Something like this. When I was out in the Salt Flats, Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah, this past October, this was a couple shots I took. Actually, this was in, we went to, I believe, right near the border. We were on the Nevada side, and it was all rocky formations and mountains and stuff. It was really cool. Anyhow, I picked up a couple of these images that I shot, and I dropped it into this design, and this is a mock-up. So I can replace those images really fast with two other images, and I don't have to sit there and say redesign everything. So that is why you might consider using a mockup, and that is, it is to help sort of enhance the presentation of your image rather than just showing a simple digital image. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get started on how to build a mockup in Photoshop. Let's do it. Okay, right here in Photoshop, one of the things I want to share with you before I actually build the mock-up is understanding certain guidelines and rules. Now, number one, there's a lot of different ways of doing a mock-ups, and I'm just going to share with you that this is the method I was taught years ago, and I've been using it ever since. But let's talk about the rules and how things work with something called a placement layer for your artwork or your photography. So first of all, I just need to go to, let's just do it the long way here. File, drop-down menu, new, and I'm just going to pick something as a size. So I'll just do a 4x3 here, because again, this is just for demo purposes to explain the rules. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer. So right here in layers, this is where I'm going to click on that. So again, we have a new layer right up here. And I'm going to grab my rectangle marquee tool right here on the toolbar. And if I go over here, let's select it, Steve. There we go. And if I click and drag this out, and I'm going to fill this with black. Now I see my chip colors over here on the toolbar is black on top, white on the bottom. So you can see this in the lower left-hand corner here. Okay, so with that, knowing that the top one is black, I'm just going to do Alt-Delete. That should be Option-Delete on the Mac to fill it in. A longer way of doing that would just go to like the Edit drop-down menu here, and again, Photoshop, and choose Fill. And in the drop-down menu, you'll see, like Fill with black, and then click on OK. And you'd get the same result right there. But shortcut keystroke just worked better for me. All right, so I deselected the marching ants around that. And what's important is sometimes we will design this placeholder. This is a placeholder that holds our image. So an example, let me open up this image right here. And let's talk about that. Okay, notice that this image right here in the frame is not a perfect rectangle. It's sort of skewed on an angle. Okay, so just bear with me on that for a moment. We don't need that anymore. If I decide to do Control-T, and then if I hold the Control key down, there should be Command on a Mac, and I come down to the corner here, and I click and drag to skew this out, like on an angle, whatever, perspective, enter on the keyboard. And then I go over here to right mouse click and choose. Now, again, the right mouse click is in the gray area, not on the thumbnail. You want to be in the gray area and do your right mouse click. And I would just want to choose. So again, with that selected, right mouse click, come down to convert to smart object right here. And now say smart object. Watch this now. There's a reason why I'm showing this. If I double click to open this up, if I place an image in there, I have to skew the image to match that shape. And that just slows me down, and I don't want to do that all the time. So I'm going to close out of that, and I'm going to delete that. And let me show you the proper way of doing this. You grab the rectangle marquee tool, which I'm going to do when I build a project here in a minute, and I select that area, and again, I fill it with black, so Alt-Delete, that should be Option-Delete on a Mac. I need to deselect that, so Control-D or Command-D on a Mac should deselect that. Before you reshape that, you want to, well, I have to add a new layer. I'm sorry about this. There's a mistake, so don't do what I just did. Okay, there's my rectangle marquee tool selected there. Add a layer, Steve. You got to add a layer. And then I'll do the Alt-Delete, and then we'll delete our marching ants. Okay, so this is on a separate layer. This is going to be called a placeholder when I show you when we build something from scratch here. The first thing I do is I don't reshape it. What I want to do is right mouse click and then choose Convert to Smart Object. Now that I did that, if I do Control-T, and again, I'm going to hold the Control key down, Command on a Mac, and I expand this out and turn the keyboard. Now I double click and I decide, okay, I'm going to File, Place Embedded. I'm going to drop in, we'll just use this image, Place. Okay, I'll resize this to make it fit in that black area. So it's almost like we're cropping the image there. Okay, so once you have that done, if I close out, it says, you want to save this? Yes. And notice what it did. It automatically skewed. Now, again, because I designed this as a rectangle first, converted to a smart object, then I reshaped it. Watch this now. I'm going to go back to Control T. And I'm going to right mouse click in here. And I'm going to choose Warp. And I can actually go in there. And if I need to warp things, like if this was laying on the ground like a sheet of paper or something, it doesn't matter. Let me just pull this down a little bit like this. Okay, enter the keyboards to accept that. Now if I double click again on this, there's my image. If I want to, let's actually delete that image, and I'm going to go to File, come down here to, again, Place Embedded, and we're going to choose a different image. Let me just choose this art piece. And again, this is horizontal, but the shape is vertical. That's fine. I'll just adjust that. That's going to be my, say, composition right there. Enter on the keyboard, close out of that. You want to update that? Yes. So choose Save. Yes. And then there we go. So the key thing before get into the project is when you create a placeholder, you just drop in the raw placeholder. In this example, it was a rectangle. Then you convert it to a smart object and then skew it or reshape it, whatever you want to do. And this will always work for you. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's dive in and let's make a project. Okay, the first thing I need to have is when I build a mockup is a starting image. And you could do some research on the internet and find different images that you could use that are free to use. It's a lot of these websites. And I'm going to take this image, and again, stock image. Do a search for like gallery, picture frames. You just got to do a little bit of research. You'll find images that you could use for free to practice this or build your own stuff, or start with your own photograph. If you have a frame that you could set up and take a photograph like this, you could use this as a mock-up, and then we'll learn how to actually build and modify that mock-up. All right, so this is the base image, and what I want to do is do a placeholder inside the frame. So I'm going to zoom in on this a bit so we can see this. And I'm going to add a new layer. So first thing, add a layer, and then I'm going to grab my marquee tool, which is again over here, M on the keyboard. That's the shortcut keystroke, or just grab it here in the toolbar. And I'm just going to randomly go inside here and just do a click and drag motion like this. That's all I need to do. Now I need to fill it in with black. So again, chip color on the far left, we did that before. And so I can see that the black is on top. So I'm going to do Alt Delete or Option Delete on the Mac, and that fills it in with black. And then to get rid of my marching ants, I just do Control D, like in David. Command D would be on your Mac. Now that I have that set, first thing I got to do, right, before I resize this, move this around, I want to go over here in the layer, in the gray area, right mouse click, and I need to choose Convert to Smart Object. Now, once I have that done, now I'll do Control T, Command T on a Mac to activate the free transform tool, or you can go to your edit drop-down menu in Photoshop and find it. And what I want to do, because it's surprising, you think this is a perfect rectangle in that frame, and the answer is no, it will be off a little bit. So I'm going to hold the Control key down, which should be Command on a Mac, and I'm going to click and drag this to this corner and place it in there. So again, I got to just take my time with this. Click and drag it right in there. Go to this corner here, click and drag it there. Now, notice there's a shadow in here at the top and the bottom. I'm going to deal with that a little bit later. Okay, so again, holding that Control key down, should be Command on a Mac, I believe. And I just go to these corners and tuck it in. Sometimes you will get a frame object in your base image, and it's slightly warped a little bit. You have a little gap or so, let's say on the side here. Well, thank goodness we could right mouse click inside here and choose warp and then tweak it to make it fit. This example looks pretty good, so I don't have to do that. Now that I'm done, I just enter on the keyboard to accept that. And there's my, say, the area that our image is going to go to. And a lot of people will call this a placeholder. So what I would do, because we're going to say this is a template at the end, I'm going to go over here, which says layer 1, just double click in there. And I'll just put in some instructions like place image here. Okay, so, and then I'm going to go over here and right mouse click and choose red. And before I save this out as a template, I want to make sure that I'm on that layer. That way, by default, when I open this up, this is highlighted, this layer, and it says place image here. So if I double click on this, this opens up. Saw this before. Go to File, drop-down menu, choose, where are we at? Place embedded, right there. Find the image you'd like to use. In this example, I'm just going to do this image right here. Sort of an art piece. Drop it in. Again, I know it's horizontal, but I could just use this rectangle as a crop tool, basically, and just say, okay, this is my composition right there. Enter on the keyboard. When I close out of this, so I go over here to close this out, it's going to ask you, do you want to save this before? And then the answer should be yes. And I'll update that, and there we go. So there is my image. Now what I want to do is I'd like to make this a little bit more realistic by adding the shadow in there. And so there's a soft shadow here at the very top. Let's see, right here. And then we have a little bit darker one there. It probably doesn't really matter on that, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a new layer. So I am on this layer here, which is not activated, which is fine. I'm going to hold the Alt key down, Option on a Mac, and it gives me this new layer dialog box. The reason I want this is just a quick shortcut to get this, rather than just pulling up a blank, say layer, and then I got to go do a whole bunch of stuff. I don't want to do it. I'm lazy. So I'm going to go over here, watch this. Drop-down menu. It's set to normal. No, I want that set to overlay. And please activate the checkbox here. Says fill it 50% gray in overlay mode. So when I click on OK, if you know anything about blending options, it's like that layer does not exist. So if I turn this layer on and off, you don't see any difference at all. Okay, now with that selected, and now if I activate my image right here, I'm going to grab my paintbrush. So B for brush. It's 100%. It's a soft edge brush. It's a pretty small brush. I just want to make this to go to this edge here. I'm going to click down on this spot one time. I'm going to hold the Shift key down and not let go. I'm going to go over here to the far right, click once, and it put that dark line there like a shadow from one point to another. I'm going to hold that Shift key down again, come all the way down to the bottom, lower right-hand corner, and Shift click there, and there we go. Now, notice that if I turn this on and off in that gray area, layer, I should say, it's actually going on the frame, and I don't want that. It should only be on the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Alt key down, Option on a Mac, hover between my two layers when I hold that down, and it changes to like a square with an arrow pointing down. I click once, and that's called a clipping mask. I've talked about clipping masks in the past. If you do it again, it just undoes that clipping mask. If you right mouse click, somewhere in there, you can also choose Create Clipping Mask right there, and right mouse click to deactivate it. So different ways of doing it. Now, I think that's a little bit too strong. So that's the beauty of this. I can pull the opacity down to get it to where I like the look of it. So maybe 20%, just a subtle shadow right there on that image. So now when I come back, let's double click on the hand so we can pull this out. And maybe consider doing something like this. I'm going to put because I'm going to save this as a template. and then I'll show you how we can use this again. I'm going to select the layer there. That's the photograph, right? The artwork there. And I'm going to choose brightness and contrast to make this real simple. It knows to make that embedded in as a clipping mask automatically. If not, then you have to clip that. And I'm going to do another one just for fun, and I'm just going to put hue and saturation. So now I have these controls where if I want to affect my image and readjust this, I can do that. Now, the reason it's clipped, if it's not clipped, let me unclip this one, by the way. So again, let me just, if I hover between the two, I'm going to unclip that, and it actually does all three. Now, if I do this, it does it to the entire image. Don't want that, okay? So let me just go back to normal there, and let's go back to creating clipping masks back in line. So that's the purpose of the clipping mask. It's affecting the image below, ignoring whatever is past that. So I'm controlling that, that image right there. Now that I have that done, and it looks pretty good, I want to save this as a template. Now, if you followed me before, it's easy to do. File drop-down menu. I'm going to choose Save As. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, hey, if you guys are learning anything, if you do, it could do me a big favor, and that is like the video, subscribe if you have not subscribed, and hit that notification bell. The next time I upload a video, you'll get notified on that. Also, if you have any questions on anything, my email address should be right here at the bottom of the screen, but it's also going to be in the show notes. It's stephenphotoartist@gmail.com. You know what I want to do with this? I want to modify this. What the heck? I did this in advance, and that is I'm going to go back here. Let's go on my background image right there. And I'm going to go to the open dialog box. So I'm just going to do Control O or Command O in a Mac. And I have this candle image. And let me show you this. It's in Photoshop. It's in a folder over here. And it's made up of a few layers. This is just giving me control of, I actually put a curves layer there. So if I need to adjust that, I could do that. And it affects that candle if I need to. Also, this is the image. And you can see below that, this is the shadow of that. So all together, I'm going to compact that, is in this folder. I'm just going to click and drag to the tab over here, come down, let go. Grab my move tool, and let's move this over here. Let me make this a little bit smaller so we can see this. And I can move this around and add another element. So the point is, you could start with a base image that you found somewhere, you know, stock art or whatever, or you paid for the image, and then you want to add some other elements to do some really cool things with it. So again, what happened there? I lost my candle if I want to place this on the book. That's just changing my stacking order. Let's click and drag and move this to the very top. And now I can have this sitting on top of the book. And everything moves with it, the shadow and everything. So if you want to add a plant there or whatever object, just to add to this, to personalize it a little bit, there you go. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. So it allows you, if you want it or not, you could turn it on and off. So let's save it as a template. Let's go to File drop-down menu. Let's go to Save As. I'm going to save this as, it's going to be my same folder, but I'm going to save it as, let's go, let's see, white poster. Well, we'll just call this, I'm going to just type in the word temp. Short for template, whatever. And then over here for PSD, it should be PSDT right here. So again, you have to add manually the T. Save it where you want to be saved. I want it in this folder right here. So I click on Save, click on OK. Okay, let's close everything out. So let's close out of this, and let's close out of that one. Okay, so now I want to use this template and mockup that I just created. And again, this is a basic one. If you stay to the end, I'm going to show you a little bit more complex one. I'm going to double click on here on my workspace. Let's go find, this is the one I just created. I put the word temp in front of it, PSDT. Remember that? So I'm going to double click to open that up. Again, for the ones that maybe haven't been following me for a while, a template just allows me to open up a pre-design, and it forces it to be an untitled document, which means I can mess this one up, save it, trash it, whatever. I did not affect my starting template. I can go back to that template and start all over if I wish. Okay, so let's just zoom in on this a little bit so you can see that again. I probably, when I saved a template, didn't need to save the image right there. But if I come down here, I would have saved the template this way. I would have got rid of the image, saved it that way. So if I close this, hopefully that makes sense, and save that as a template, then this is what you would get. Okay, so when you open it up, this is what you get. You double click, and let me do a different image. Let me come down to, again, place embedded. Let's use a vertical image. Let's make that fit by resizing it. Enter in the keyboard. Close out of that. That tab right there, yes, let's update that. And there we go. Now that I have that there, and if I take a look at this image, along with the rest of the photo, it seems like this is really saturated a lot. It really punches out, and maybe I don't want that. Well, guess what I did? Remember, I did an area here called brightness. If I want to pull the brightness down a little bit, if I want to go over here to hue and saturation, I can push that down a little bit, just sort of help match with the background. And so there's a easy before and after here on that with the saturation and the brightness. Cool. And you could add other things there, things that you might commonly use. You might want to add these adjustment layers there to save you time when you created a template. It gives you the option. And also, if you want to add a bunch of elements that you could turn on and off, like the calendar, that's just one, but maybe you like to have 2 or 3 things in there. Maybe I found something that didn't have a vase with flowers, and I added that, and I could turn that on and off if I want, or change it. So you can do some really cool creative things right there. Okay, let's take a look at one other thing, and then we're going to end this. Let me show you what I've been working on in Photoshop, and it's not finished yet, but again, I'm just going to double click in my workspace, and I've got this called 3 frames horizontal, 1 image, and I have another one that's a template called 3 frames vertical, 1 image. Let me just demo one of them. I'll just do the horizontal one. Just double click to open that up. And again, it's a template. So I talked about that. That means that now this is an untitled document, and anything I do here isn't affecting my original template. Now let me hide the guidelines here, and let's make this a little bit smaller so we can view this. A lot is going on here. This is a little bit more challenging design and technique. And so this works different. You don't double click on this to open it up and put your image in there. It doesn't work. What you have to, because of linking and other special things that are happening here, I just right mouse click in the gray area, and I come down to a feature in there called Replace Contents. And then when I select that, it'll open up my dialog box. I'll just choose this image, the artwork, click on place, and it will drop that in. Again, based on resolution and that. Now that it's set in there, I can do Control T, Command T on a Mac, and come over here to resize this. And obviously you want to have, some type of image that has, say, 3 interesting areas that you could sort of block out. This would be awesome for landscape photography, where you might have something that's centered, but you have some interesting areas on the far left to far right. And then once you got that position, let's say, again, just playing with this, I like that, enter on the keyboard to accept that. Okay, and then I can export that out and save it. But here's the cool thing. Over here, it says choose frames. Now, I'm still working in that area. It's not done yet, but I have it set to old prints here. So I can turn that off. And I'm going to choose the dark edges. So, again, different look. Turn that off, come down to, let's say postcard, a little bit different look there versus old prints that I had before. There we go, that one. And how about with borders and these corner things? So again, you could change that, right? So let me just go back to, I think I had this one. Let's do this one there. Okay, and then I can compact that. And then down here, choose textures. I'm not done with this area. I want to add some more, but we can turn things on. Now, this affects the background. So look at the outer edge as I turn this on and off, how that's being affected. I'd like to add a couple other things in there. And then I got another category here to change the background color. That's just double clicking on this, picking what you want. You can lighten this up if you want, change the colors. Maybe, hey, pick a color off one of the images right here. I mean, that's possible if you want to do that. And then click on OK. So again, that's just in that category. And then the very last one has to do with the actual background. So if I expand that out and scroll down here, we've got this one selected. But you could turn it off and say, you know what, I want the black right there, or I want this background right there. So those are, all your choices and stuff. And let's close that out. So this is a little bit more sophisticated. Something I'm working on, not done. And I also have one that goes vertical, but this is using one image. I'm thinking about creating another one like this. I don't know how sophisticated I can get with turning on and off the frames, but what if I wanted 3 individual images from, say, a same set of images? I'd like to work on that and figure that out. So I'm thinking about, I haven't made up my mind yet, about offering these on buymeacoffee.com/Stephen Photo Artist. For the ones that have been around for a while know about that website, because this is not, my website's not monetized, not sponsored. And if you'd like to donate a coffee, the link is right here on the screen, but it's also in the show notes. And then there's an extra tab that you can find things that I put up for sale. And I try to keep things very reasonable, like $5, $7. When I put up my mini courses there, it's going to be $10 on a course that I normally charge for $100 as a hands-on class for a half day. That'll eventually be up there. Actually, I got 2 or 3 in mind, and they're going to be there, $10. I'm trying to keep this really low end, say, budget-wise, because I know a lot of people, this is a hobby. You may not have a lot of money to go out and invest $50, $60, $100 all the time and stuff. I want you to cherry pick what you need and what you're interested in, and try to keep things, again, at the $5, $7, and $10 range. All right, so with that out of the way, hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. Do me a favor again. I try to end this by saying, get that camera out. Go out and push yourself, make some mistakes. Why? Because we learn from making mistakes. Literally, let's think creatively out of the box. Until next time, see ya.